Good morning, guys. Welcome to another episode of Vietnam Innovators. I'm your host, Hảo Trần. Of course, you recognize me every week in and week out. Just a small plug for the Vietnamese edition of the show, too. Check out our host, Miro, who's hosting guests on the Vietnamese edition of the show. He's got some great episodes lined up and those past filmed as well, so make sure to check out that. But thank you for tuning in, meanwhile, on my show. We are very pleased to be welcoming a guest. He's come from overseas, actually, but his company, Matrixport, that he represents, is a global company with a pretty big presence here in Vietnam, and they're doing some really cool initiatives for the Vietnam market, and we want to talk about those today, especially in relation to the space that they're operating in, personal finance, crypto, blockchain, just a lot of related areas. I'll let Kavi kind of explain more about that, though. Kavi, welcome to the show.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me,
yes.
Especially so early on in the morning.
Of course. It's we're here in the very leafy garden of the Viet Center studio in the middle of Ho Chi Minh City. And I understand it's, just recently you've joined Matrixport and you've been in the space for a long time, though.
I've been in the space for a very long time, yeah. So I've been a player for about 2.5 years.
Okay, that's a lifetime in this space.
It is, yeah, that's right. Yeah, the industry moves so fast. But I've been with Matrixport just a very short time, but It's a fantastic organization and they're doing some very amazing, innovative things to deliver value for customers.
Yeah. And 2.5 years in the space, and now you're at Matrixport. What was the pull that brought you into this company? Was it the growth, the expansion, their interest in emerging markets? What is that?
So for me, it's always about understanding the fundamentals, right? And I think what Matrixport is trying to do is they're trying to build an ecosystem for investors around the world. So whether you're an institutional investor, whether you're a retail investor, whether you have or are looking for an early opportunity to invest in crypto assets or any form of digital assets, or if you're looking for an opportunity to build out your portfolio. I think Matrixport offers a solution for everyone. And they have a number of innovative products that they've built that I don't think anyone in the space is really effectively looking at. I think the company was one of the first to bring out dual currency, which is a fantastic product, and it allows users to earn a passive income. So yeah, it was one of the sort of key things that really excited me about the opportunity to work at Matrixport.
Okay,
yeah,
excellent. Well, before we go more deep dive into the products of Matrixport and understand what you guys truly focus on, I'd love to hear about your role exactly, Kavi. It's been a short time. I'm sure the role changes every single day as it does with the space.
That's right.
But maybe you can share about what you're doing at Matrixport and what your responsibilities are.
Yeah, absolutely. So I oversee global marketing and communications efforts. So everything from growth, the company's reputation, public relations. I also sort of support the team when it comes to, accessing the products and building out those products to ensure that they are of value to our customers. So almost dipping them in the community to get that or gather that community feedback, make sure we are innovating for the right cause. It does change on a day-to-day basis. There's always new things happening. I didn't expect myself to be in Vietnam today, but again, beautiful place, great opportunity here. The market is absolutely booming.
Cool. And what about your background before joining Matrixport? You shared you were in the space for 2.5 years. What were those companies and areas that you were working in?
So my former company, I was actually at Cake DeFi. So Cake DeFi is a CDeFi platform, centralized access to decentralized financial applications and services. And again, very similar to Matrixport, they enable users to generate a yield off their crypto assets and investments. And they're powered by DeFi Chain, which is a very interesting and exciting project in the blockchain space. It's a layer 1 protocol built on Bitcoin rather than on Ethereum. Again, very, very innovative, very, very different. And I was with them for, I think, just under a couple of years or a year and a half. Again, I looked at global marketing and communications, effectively grew the company to 1 million users within a year. But they've built up a lot of equity within the industry. And you see a lot of customer feedback in terms of, positive news about how the investments in the platform have enabled users to take a holiday, buy a car, pay for a wedding, pay for their child's university or higher education fees, pay off debt even. And it's just wonderful to see. And the crypto market has, to a certain degree, there are a lot of negative news. There's a lot of negative news out there. And to see the sort of, the opposite side of it, where crypto is actually enabling wealth creation, it's just fantastic to see. So I was there for about 1.5 years, and prior to that, I was at Bybit as their chief editor, so looking after all their own content, marketing and operations. So I've been in the space for a little bit of time, and I've been an active investor since, I want to say 2017, 2018.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned about the negativity around it, and a lot of people, they don't look outside of the box a little bit. I mean, the entire financial markets are in a bit of a turmoil at the moment, and this is normal. These are cycles that the markets go through. And if you look at some of the dips in the equities market, the stock market, it's actually even more than crypto. So I think just put in perspective, just put it out there. I think everyone's kind of going through tough times, but for those companies that are resilient and can make it through, surely good times are ahead, especially for the industry as well.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. And I think you hit the nail on the head, right? It is very sort of cyclical. And we've seen these phases happen every 3, 4, 5 years. They are getting a little bit closer together, so they're a little bit more compact now. And the markets are correlating ever so closely. So you're now seeing the impact on traditional financial markets as well as the digital asset market. But again, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, it's sort of anyone's guess. The market moves so fast that we could expect to see more and more of these sort of tangible connections over the coming years.
Right. Let's take a step back a little bit too and talk about Matrixport itself. I understand it's one of Asia's fastest growing digital asset financial services companies. What are some milestones recently that kind of highlight that for Matrixport?
So Matrixport is definitely one of Asia's fastest growing crypto or digital asset management companies. It enables access to crypto. We have over $10 billion. We do have a number of high profile investors. We successfully raised our Series C funding at $100 million, which gives us a unicorn status, which I guess sort of backs up from a credibility standpoint to showcase that one, the company was able to raise such funds, and also the investment backing proves that there is significant trust in Matrixport as an organization to effectively grow within the ecosystem.
Especially institutional investment. That's the key driver of a lot of the growth, hopefully to come in market.
That's right. I think we have between sort of 60 and 70 real big key institutional players invested in our platform. And that is definitely an opportunity that we're looking to explore a little bit further down the line as well.
So we talked about some of the turmoil the markets in general are going through right now. What's the long-term value of digital assets? And maybe you can share that from a Vietnamese perspective, those especially retail or institutional are looking to get in. What's the value for these kind of players?
The value is exponential. So we know that Vietnam is an incredibly bustling space, especially for crypto. There's a lot of interesting data. I was reading something on AAAI just the other day, which highlighted that around 7% of the Vietnamese population own a crypto asset, and over 95%, I believe, are looking at opportunities in the crypto space. So you can definitely see that there's an appetite, especially amongst the retail investors in Vietnam. In terms of the longevity and the potential, again, it's very similar to, people are familiar with the traditional financial markets, right? I would assume that they're a little bit more accessible. Again, mass media or international media sort of perpetuates that because it's constantly covered in daily news. But you're now seeing that sort of shift into discussions around the crypto market. Yes, to a certain degree, a lot of the news is sensationalist. We've seen this over the last few days. For those of you who've been following the sort of Terra Luna story. And again, in the industry, you do have, again, it's a very, very small minority. And you see the same thing in traditional financial markets as well. And there are a couple of cowboy players. And that is something that we as an industry are trying to eradicate to sort of provide that level of credibility. But in terms of the asset value, it's exponential. You're now seeing the advent of gamify, which allows you to earn or play to earn. So you play games, you don't even realize that you're on the blockchain, and you're earning rewards as a result of playing some of your favorite games. You're seeing move to earn, and it's a case of sort of activating an application on your phone. accessing the blockchain, moving around, and again, generating returns and rewards just by moving around. So the opportunities and the value of the industry is boundless.
Okay. And let's talk about how they're valued.
Sure.
I mean, there's, you can say it's the same. You mentioned the Terra Luna story, for instance. I've been following on Twitter, for instance, that out there's a lot of what they call economic hitmen, kind of people out to just, manipulate the markets. And because it's fairly nascent and still new, it opens that possibility. So maybe you can share about how these guys, these digital assets are valued.
Again, digital assets could encompass a whole bunch or a whole plethora of terms, right? You've got your cryptocurrencies, you've got your NFTs. So there's a whole bunch of different ways we can sort of look at digital assets. If we're looking at crypto or crypto tokens, for example, cryptocurrencies, again, there's no singular metric to sort of identify the value of a specific project token. This is usually based on a number of different variable factors. So total value locked, market capacity, scarcity is also a sort of key pointer when it comes to assessing the value of a crypto asset. And scarcity, what that basically means is there is a limited number of crypto assets available to users.
Like in Bitcoin, there's 21 million units.
That's right.
It can be broken down into Satoshis. Is that right?
That's correct. That's correct.
But the number of whole Bitcoins is only 21 million, whereas opposed to currencies, which could continue to be printed as money is needed, but that creates inflation. Anyways, we're going to rabbit hole a little bit. So, I mean, scarcity is a big one, I would say.
Scarcity and rarity.
They were saying, I was reading again on the Twitterverse about how the number of millionaires in the world, there's not enough single whole Bitcoins for them.
That's absolutely true. Yeah. That's absolutely true.
Hypothetically, as the value of this currency increases and people want one whole rather than just a Satoshi,
we'll see the value increase. And I, for me personally, I would hope to see it increase exponentially. But again, you're absolutely right. Scarcity and rarity is a sort of key factor. There just aren't enough tokens in the world. And then you've got things like marketing. I mean, for those of you who are active on Twitter, Elon Musk is he's a big advocate of the crypto space. He's also very critical of the crypto space.
Are you big on Twitter too, Kavi?
I'm not that big on Twitter. No,
we should follow you anyways.
Please do. Please do.
Well.
You'll see a couple of good photos on there, but that's about it. It's mostly me out drinking late night somewhere. A single tweet from him could sort of increase the value of a specific cryptocurrency by 20, 30, 40, 50%. So there are so many different variable factors as to why or what sort of ascertains the value of a specific crypto project.
Would you say that retail investors have this never seen before bigger influence on value of digital assets as well, or any type of asset really? The proliferation of information, you mentioned like Twitter, someone that's being followed by almost 100 million people can influence how, especially retail traders, right? Because they could trade faster or make decisions independently.
Yeah.
How has that changed the whole game for valuations?
I mean, it's been incredible, right? The advent of social media, the sort of whole Web 2 movement, over the last 10, 15 years. The fact that users are a lot more active on there. You've got these opinion leaders and influencers who are actively supporting various projects. Because again, they may have invested in these projects and they want to share this with their audience base to sort of help them facilitate the ability to earn from their investments. It's been incredible. Community forms a significant pillar for a lot of these blockchain and crypto projects. And the fact that you have thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people actively promoting specific projects on open forum platforms like Reddit, crypto Twitter, which is what we sort of consider the sort of crypto variant of Twitter. It's the same thing, but it's just people predominantly talking about crypto. I think it's been a sizable seismic movement, and the community has a bigger role to play now than ever before.
Let's step aside from the retail trader a little bit. I think we know the story there. It's an emerging group and community that needs to be taken seriously. Let's talk about companies. Companies are looking to invest from their balance sheet or to protect, diversify their investments. Some of them might be concerned about the security and preservation of these assets. Does Matrixport specialize in that? And if so, how do they do that?
Yes. We have a product called Cactus Custody. And it's a very innovative sort of product that we've created, backed by sort of leaders in the cybersecurity space. And what we enable is we can protect users' assets. This is where it gets a little bit more complicated. So there are various custodial solutions out there in the market. And there are various protocols or ways in which companies can protect their own digital assets and investments. They could do a number of different things. So they can remove them from a hot wallet and put them in a cold wallet, which is effectively taking them offline and putting them on a storage device. But again, what if you lose the access keys? And for those of you who don't know, there are various phrases that you have to memorize or write down in a book. Please do not copy and paste them and put them on your computer or the same computer that could be vulnerable to any form of cyber attack. But that's one way of protecting your assets, I guess, to a certain degree. But with Cactus Custody, we use very sort of high grade security systems that are trusted, that have been built by our team of former cybersecurity specialists, people who have worked in the financial industries, who have worked for banks, who have worked for various government units, and it sort of allows us to put in high grade protection services for institutional assets.
Thank you for sharing, Kavi, about securing how Matrixport approaches securing digital assets through the Cactus Custody product. How does that differ, though, from other more traditional assets like stocks? Is it more advanced? Is it more innovative? How does that work exactly?
I think to a certain degree it has to be more innovative because again, the crypto industry is still very much in its infancy. It's seen a level of maturity, and you can almost sort of consider it in its teenage years. But again, it's by comparison to the traditional financial markets, very, very new. And as such, with the advent of new technology, with opportunists and bad actors in the space looking to take advantage of any form of vulnerability, we do have to be very, very careful in terms of how we protect user assets. And I'm not talking about specifically Matrixport or Cactus Custody, but I'm also talking about the industry in general, in order to protect user funds. Now, there's a number of things that users can do. I think I touched upon one of them earlier, and that is taking your crypto assets offline and storing them on a cold wallet. However, when you do that, you lose the opportunity to generate yield from them because they're not accessible on the blockchain at that particular time, right? It's just recorded on there. So as a result of that, we need to ensure that we're providing best-in-class security solutions to protect all of our customers' financial or digital financial investments on the platform. And that's where Cactus Custody comes in. In terms of the sort of key differentiators between stocks and or any sort of traditional financial asset, when it comes to digital assets, I mentioned earlier that opportunists and bad actors, and a lot of the Ethereum-based projects using Solidity as the coding language, they're prone to things like human error, and that is a fact with any form of real coding. And as such, we've got to be very, very careful and diligent to ensure that when codes are under review, they are heavily scrutinized. We can sort of identify, white hat, maybe even sort of gray hat security specialists to try and find vulnerabilities in various code. But we are very proud of the Cactus Custody solution, and it's innovative in so many different ways by how or in the way in which it protects our users' funds. And I mentioned earlier the sort of bad actors in the space. No industry is vulnerable to that. Unfortunately, in the crypto space, you read more about it because there are so many smaller projects out there that are being developed by some people who may not fully understand where those vulnerabilities lie. And the space absolutely demands more and more security specialists and protection. So because of that, it's potentially subject to more or higher degree of market manipulation, of blockchain attacks, and these are things that we have to be very, very careful about. So we have a team in place, and there's a bunch of different companies that do this as well, that effectively review the coding on various blockchain projects, or even on security solutions and custodial solutions, to ensure that they are safeguarded to the best of their abilities.
Okay. Yeah, you kind of answered my next question about potential risks like market manipulation or the lack of regulation. And it really comes down to retail institutional investors really researching who they're working with, putting their trust into. It could be on the project side, it could be on the company side, like a Matrixport. So it really comes down to, one is doing the research, but hopefully the maturity of the industry evolves, and well-run teams can protect their users at the end of the day and customers.
Absolutely. And I think
it's no different to any bank, actually.
That's right. Yeah.
It really isn't. Yeah.
But with banks, you're always looking at the rates, right? That's predominantly the sort of key focus. And inherently, there is a trust with banks. And that is something that the crypto market is now starting to build up. You wouldn't sort of blink twice, at which bank you want to invest your funds or open an account with. Within the crypto space, doing your own research, identifying, the crypto assets or the digital assets that you want to purchase, the ones that you want to hold, the ones you want to invest in. I would 100% back that statement. Do your research. Again, we mentioned this earlier before. So crypto Twitter, the social media space, there are a lot of people out there that actively pump various projects. And it's important not to get carried away with that, because you can start, again, the way in which social media works, you click on one video, the algorithm will kick in and it will try and feed you more and more content similar to that piece of content that you've just viewed.
But the first one wasn't necessarily the best one.
Exactly. Yeah. But a lot of it would sort of, they'd use various keywords to identify what a viewer has seen or is reading through, and they will start pumping you more and more information along those lines. So it's not necessarily a good thing. It gives you the ability to potentially learn more and take a wider breadth of information. But again, depending on the subject matter, you could be seeing constant pump content. So please, anyone out there who is interested, do your own research, have a look at the project fundamentals. There's a lot of people in the crypto space that are willing to sort of provide support and information. At Matrixport, we think education is incredibly important. In fact, it's our priority pillar. And it's something that we firmly believe in. Without providing sufficient education to, both retail and institutional investors, it's very difficult to advise them on the decision-making process. And we want to ensure that when they do decide to invest in any crypto or anything in the sort of Web3 space, the DeFi space, the digital asset realm, that they're making a choice that is a decision that they are comfortable with.
Right. Yeah. Just as a side note on Vietcetera, our media networks, throughout the last 2 years, as the retail investor really emerged, the thing is, Vietcetera, we have a considerably large Gen Z and millennial audience. And we saw that their reaction and engagement with any content we were putting out there related to personal finance was highest ever, and it continues to grow on a daily basis. You can see the numbers, and it's quite exciting. And I think we've been seeing more demand for that financial literacy, personal finance education, and it's great to see you guys are committed to that as well, especially in a market like Vietnam, where, to be frank, there is very little content. Even before this whole retail investor explosion happened, personal finance was still quite fundamentally sparse. But I see the emergence of that happening. But for those of you listening in today that are on the younger side or just curious about money, obviously do your research about where you're starting. Not all research is good, or to be trusted. I think you have to really start at a good fundamental place. Check all your sources, And then when you find a couple, then you can go down the rabbit hole, hopefully. So
great advice.
Exactly. So my next question is the idea of, the investments we talked about it goes up and it goes down. Right now, we're in a bit of what you would call a bear market. And that term really strikes fear into the hearts of many investors. Tell us more about that term. There's also terms like buy the dip. This is an NFA podcast, though. NFA, if you don't know what that means, not financial advice. This is purely educational right now. Tell us more about what is a bear market and how does one take advantage of it. And when I say take advantage, I don't mean like go buy right now. But take advantage could mean, do your research, make sure you're ready to leverage on that position. Let's start there.
Yeah, absolutely. So the bear market is basically the market moving sideways or faltering to a certain degree. On the opposite side, you've got the bullish market or the bull market where we're seeing significant increases. So right now, the market is moving sideways. We're at that sort of lateral stage. And this gives people the opportunity to sort of take a step back, look at the opportunities. If you already own crypto assets, and again, just to be very, very clear, not offering financial advice, but for those who do have crypto assets, a lot of people are starting to shift them into platforms where they can generate yield. So you have long-term investors, you have short-term investors. Now, very early on in this conversation, we talked about, the markets can be very cyclical. And in the crypto market, we've seen this in, I think, 2017, 2018. And a lot of the sort of big players in the industry, and I'm talking about the organizations, the companies, the innovative companies, were effectively born out of the bear markets. It's an opportunity for them to double down on R&D and create products that have longevity and really offer value during these specific times. And I think, it's very similar to Matrixport or the vision when the founders initially created the company, what they wanted to do, and that is unlock and enable yield generation through your crypto assets or digital assets. So with the market being bearish right now, it's a good opportunity for people to sit back, conduct their research, have a look at where the opportunities lie. Again, you mentioned multiple sources earlier. When you are conducting research, that is a invaluable point. So never stick to a single source. There is no North Star or single point of truth. It's always important to try and gather as much information as possible before you make any decision. And then you mentioned buy the dip. Now, this is something that I personally am a big believer of. So I myself am a Bitcoin maximalist. I have been a Bitcoin investor for quite a while now, and I buy into various projects building off the Bitcoin blockchain. So for me, this has been a great opportunity to continue to buy, because I do believe that the value of Bitcoin is going to increase substantially. But again, this is just my view, and I wouldn't want to sort of express that to anyone listening out there today. It's important to conduct your own research. And then again, during the bear market, owning the asset itself, so very similar to the stock market, right? You own a specific asset. You can generate a dividend, or you'll be paid a dividend on that asset. But then you only own the value of that specific asset. Now with Matrixport, you can apply that asset into one of our products and generate yield through one of the various products. So that could be lending to institutions. That could be our dual currency products that allows you to enter into a dual currency market, and you'll receive returns depending on the market price of those currencies. You receive one in return.
So when you mean yield, it's like to put it in the more Vietnamese terms, if I buy an apartment and rent it out, you're going to get a rental.
That's exactly
amount.
it. That's exactly it. I don't know if it's the same thing here. My parents used to tell me.
So instead of buying an apartment, you can buy a digital asset.
Digital assets. That's exactly it.
What sort of yields are available right now to an investor?
They vary depending on the product utilization, right? So for fixed income, we're offering up to 30% APY. When it comes to dual currency products, it could be 70, 80, 90, depending on the currency pairing. So the yield varies. Again, a lot of these rates are relatively variable. But again, it's a great opportunity for people to generate a passive income while they still own the the crypto asset itself. And then when the market improves, it's entirely up to them what they choose to do with it. Again, for me, I've been utilizing these yield generating products for quite a while now. So for me, it's, I'm a long-term investor. That's always been the way I've seen the market. And at these times, more than ever, it's an opportunity for my crypto to work for me.
Yeah. So, as a follow-up, what type of digital asset would you hold during the bear market? It sounds like, you're holding everything at the moment. You have to be able to, be resilient during the ups and downs.
Absolutely. And again, this is very, very personal to me. Again, being a Bitcoin maximalist, the majority of my crypto holdings are Bitcoin. However, I do own a number of other digital assets in the space as well. So I was fortunate enough to buy a fair few NFTs very, very early doors by some very large community groups. Simultaneously, thanks to, we talked about this earlier, I think offline, we were talking about the airdrops. And there are so many projects out there that, offer various airdrops for various crypto tokens. And some of them have performed quite well, some of them not so much. But I still own those assets. And, in the DeFi space as well, decentralized finance, I look at staking as a viable option. So whatever crypto assets I do have that enable staking, or where I can stake those for additional yield to sort of support the blockchain, I absolutely will do.
Okay. Yeah. And my last question today too, and we'll do a bit of an ending here, Kavi, is given the unpredictability of the crypto market, what does FOMO behavior work in investing mean, and how to avoid that feeling? So for those listeners that don't know what I am referencing to, FOMO, another Twitterverse term, means the fear of missing out. Some of your colleagues who may have invested have kind of seen their assets multiply by many folds, not just double even in some cases. But at the same time, they may have collapsed. What is your suggestion, for especially the retail investors or even institutional, to know about this particular behavior in the markets and how to avoid it in a negative sense?
So I think FOMO, you mentioned it, I think Netflix utilized it very well, right? When growing the business. The fear of missing out on various pieces of content that they were creating. So in the financial markets, in the traditional financial markets and in the digital financial markets, FOMO is not always a good thing. And again, there is a negative connotation associated to the term FOMO. We have seen an abundance of new money flow into the industry, right? When we think about the traditional stock markets, you think about your Warren Buffetts, you think about your sort of huge, high value players in the industry who have made millions upon millions, if not billions, in the stock markets. And it's not been as readily accessible to people around the world. Again, up until maybe 10, 15 years ago, you'd had to go through very specific brokerage firms in a lot of countries in the world just to access specific markets in other parts of the world. With the crypto space, it's almost like democratizing the way in which users can generate or create value or purchase assets, digital assets, on the blockchain. And we've seen a lot of people earn a significant amount of money or generate wealth, let's put it that way, because of the value of their assets. Remember, it's not just about the cash, it's also about the asset value. And we've seen a lot more people do that. And because, again, you mentioned it, Gen Zs, millennials, these are people who are a little bit more open to investing in the digital asset market. And you'll see a lot of friends, a lot of people that you follow online who have generated wealth in the digital asset market. But it's important not to fall down that rabbit hole. There is no get-rich-quick scheme, right? And anyone telling you that there is a get-rich-quick scheme or has the trigger to the get-rich-quick scheme, again, please don't believe that. They are trying to instill the notion of FOMO. We don't know how these people are working with various projects.
They might be incentivized in the wrong way and manipulating other people to benefit from that. Right?
Exactly. So, again, it's so important to do your own research. Use your own sensibility to understand or digest the content that they're creating. And just be very careful, right? There is when you when you are investing in anything, and this can be applied across any investment that you undertake, we talked about do your own research, but only invest what you believe you can potentially afford to lose, right? And now that sounds a little bit counterintuitive, but again, that's a piece of advice that I've sort of stuck with. And it's not my saying, by all means. I think people have been talking about this for years and years and years and years. But it's something that I abide by when it comes to my own personal investments. And you see a lot of digital asset projects, a lot of blockchain projects, a lot of crypto assets increase in value substantially. Within a couple of hours, assets can increase by 1,000%, 1,500%, 2,000%. And you start working out those calculations. If I had put in $3, how much would that be to me now? And something as little as $3. But again, it's important not to get carried away with that, because these are shots in the dark, right? We don't know where they're going to stick. We don't know who they're going to hit. And again, just as fast as they go up, they can come down and they could really sting you. So again, we've said this multiple times, do your own research, have a look at the project. And when you're comfortable and you feel fully comfortable in investing in something, that's when you take that leap.
Thank you, Kavi, for sharing your insights on the industry and Matrixport as well. I always like to finish every podcast with a very simple question. Is Matrixport hiring in Vietnam? I'm sure a lot of people are listening to this podcast have got their interest piqued about what you guys are doing. Are you hiring in Vietnam?
Yes, we're hiring all over the world. It's a fantastic organization. We are definitely trying to cultivate a new way of working in our space, catering to both the institutional investor and the retail investor. So if you are interested, please feel free to reach out. So one platform I am quite active on, and that is LinkedIn.
Okay, yeah.
Ironically enough.
No, me too, actually.
Are you?
Ironically enough. I think it's an underrated platform. Everyone on Twitter hates LinkedIn, but then I use it and I love it. I'm also on Twitter though, but...
Are you active on Twitter as well?
Not as much.
Not as much. Yeah, I'm the same way. I should be a lot more active on Twitter, and I am planning to be a lot more active on Twitter. But for the time being, I seem a lot of my thought leadership stuff tends to go on to platforms like LinkedIn. But yeah, we are hiring all over the world. If it's something that you're interested in, please reach out. We're looking for people across various categories and specialisms.
Excellent. Well, Kavi, thank you for joining the show. It's been a pleasure learning about yourself, Matrixport, the industry, what all these terminologies mean for the average retail investor. We look forward to having you on next time, and best of luck with everything that's happening with Matrixport here in Vietnam.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you to everyone listening in today.
Thanks everyone for tuning in for another episode of Vietnam Innovators with Kavi. He's the VP at Matrixport for communications and marketing. Check it out, Matrixport in Vietnam. They're hiring, they're here, doing cool stuff in the industry. We'll see you guys next time. Matrixport is one of the world's largest and most trusted crypto financial services with $10 billion in assets under management. It provides one-stop crypto services including Cactus custody, spot OTC, fixed income, structured products, and asset management. Headquartered in Singapore, Matrixport's mission is to make crypto easy for everyone, and its motto is get more from your crypto. The company holds licenses in Hong Kong, Singapore, and Switzerland, and serves both institutions and retail customers.